Hey guys, this is Mark with Tech Necessity. Today I'm going to be doing a Blender tutorial teaching you how you can turn a 2D image into a 3D object. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can turn a 2D image like this into a 3D image like this. Let's get into it. Today we're going to be talking about how we can create a 3D logo or 3D object from a 2D image. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and open up Blender. I'm using Blender 2.83. Get out of here. I'm going to delete the default cube by selecting it, pressing the X key, and delete. The next thing I'm going to do is move my view into the top position. What I'm going to do now is add my image that I want to use to create my 3D object. So if I hit Shift A and go down to Image, Background, I can add a background image. I happen to have one on my desktop that I'm going to use. It's this aperture logo. So if I select that, load it into my background, you can see there it is. Now to make it a little easier to work with, I'm actually going to adjust the transparency a little bit. So if I go over to my menu, my image menu, and I turn on the transparency, and I bring this down, you can see it gets a little more translucent. Bringing the opacity down, it's going to make it a lot easier for me to work with what I'm going to do. So once I've got that set, the first thing I need to do is start to trace these lines. So the way I'm going to do that is by using the Bezier, using a Bezier curve. So if I push Shift A again, and I go up to Curve, Bezier, I get this here. Now if I hit the Tab key to go into edit mode, you'll see that I have this now. The reason why it has these little arrows on it is because currently it is a 3D curve. What we want to do is make it just 2D because we're working with the 2D object. So over here in the curve menu, if I go up to 2D, you'll see those little arrows disappear. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually increase my resolution. I'm going to make this say 24. And then I'm going to go over to my curve, and I'm actually going to change by pressing the V key. Once it's all selected, press the V key. I'm going to change the type of handles from automatic to vector. And what that does is it basically makes it a straight line. It's going to be a lot easier to work with straight lines when you're tracing these objects. So if I press the G key, I can move this first one into place. I'm going to put this first point right on this spot. I'm going to click on this vertex, and I'm going to hit the G key, and I'm going to move that up to this corner. Then in order to extend this, I'm going to extrude it by pressing the E key. So if I press E, I can extrude to this corner. Now what I want to do is close this off. So the way I'm going to do that is by leaving this vertex selected. I'm going to go over to this other one, hold Shift, so that they're both selected, and then press the F key to create a face. So now what I've done is I've closed off my shape. But if you look, these lines look pretty good, but this one needs to match this curve. So the way I'm going to do that is by selecting this handle here, pressing the G key, and just moving this in place to get the right curve. Now I'm going to select this handle, press G, move it there. So now you can see I have this curve that matches that. Fortunately, this object actually has the same shape, just multiple times rotated around to create the initial shape. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to select all of these vertices, and I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate. And then I'm going to move it over here. And then all I really need to do is rotate this. So if I push rotate, R for rotate, on the Z axis, and then I do -60, enter, you can see that it actually lines it up pretty well. Now all I have to do is go over to my move tool and just move it into place. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to duplicate again, Shift D, move this one down here. I'm going to rotate on the Z axis -60, enter, and then move that one into place. Okay, so now as you can see, I have traced my entire object. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the image in the background so I can see my shape. I'm going to hit the tab key to tab out of the edit mode, and you can see I have this shape now that looks like this. So what I want to do though is I want to fill it in. So I want these faces to actually have a face to make it a solid object. So in order to do that, I come over here to my curve tool menu, and under fill mode I need to change this. Well, there's a couple of different options. So right now it's set to none. If I do front, it will fill the front. Now it's kind of hard to see this without actually making it into a 3D object. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and extrude this out. So under geometry, extrude, I'm going to turn this up, and I'm going to change the angle a little bit so we can see what we got. So if I extrude this up, you can see it makes it more into a 3D object. Under the fill mode, when I have front selected, this is the front of the object. So basically I'm filling this front area. If I actually rotate underneath, you can see that there's no back to this. It's not filling the back. So if I rotate to the front and I change this to back, now you can see the front. There's no surface on the front, but there is a surface on the back. What I want to do is actually make this both. So I'm going to go ahead and press fill mode, both. Now you can see it's filled on both sides. So I'm going to actually reposition my view to the top view once again. And I'm going to add a background, a surface. So if I hit Shift A, Mesh, Plane, I'm going to size this up by pressing the S key. Okay, so now what I have is an object there, but it's kind of on top of it. So I'm actually going to go to the move mode, and I'm going to move this plane down a little bit. So now there's a little bit of a space between the plane and what we created. The next thing I need to do is add some materials to these objects. So if I select my background plane, and I go over here to my materials tool, I can add a new surface or a new material to that, and I'm going to go ahead and name this background. Okay, so right now my background is set to white. I'm actually going to go ahead and leave it at white for now. If I select the curve, the shape that we made, and I add a new material to that, I'll name this logo, and I'm going to change the color on this just so we can differentiate them. So if I change this to like a bluish color. Okay, now you notice that it didn't change blue here, and that's because I don't have it selected for me to be able to see it. So if I click here, it will show me what the materials actually look like. This isn't the final rendered look, but it is the materials look. The next thing I'm going to do is position my camera. So my camera currently, if we see where it's at now, if I was to go into my camera view, you can see that's what we're looking at. What I want to do is position this camera so it's facing straight down on top of this. So in order to do that, I'm going to move my camera into position. So the way I can do that is by selecting this, and if I press the N key, you can see it has all my location and my rotation. So if I just change all these back to 0, okay, so now my camera is directly in the middle of my plane. So if I would just use this to draw it up on the Z-axis, and I'm going to go into, what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to right click on this little line, and I'm going to split this vertically, so I have two windows. In this window I'm going to hit the N key to get rid of the menu, and I'm going to press the 0 key on my numpad to go into camera view. And then I'm actually N key to go back into this menu, and I'm going to click view, and I'm going to click lock camera to view. Hit N to get out of this, and then as I drag my wheel, I can actually change what the camera view looks like. So right there is where the entire object is in it. Now you see that my surface doesn't quite cover the entire camera, so I'm going to click on the surface, and I'm going to scale it up just a little bit more. So now my entire background, my camera is covering the entire background. Now I want to position my light. Now that my camera's in position, I'm going to position my light. So I'm actually going to click on the little light right here, and I'm going to move it into position. So if I move it over a little bit, maybe move it down just a tad. And in order to see what this looks like, I'm actually going to switch my render mode. So if I go to the render menu, instead of Eevee, I'm going to change this to cycles. And then I'm going to click on the little render tab button up here, so that way I can see what it actually looks like. So this is my actual rendered image. If I hit the N key, I'm going to turn off lock to camera view, hit the N key to get rid of that menu, and then that way I can zoom in a little bit to see what it looks like. So as I move this light over here, you can see the shadow changes in the background. If I were to click on the background surface and move it a little closer, you can see that it adjusts the shadow that way as well. I'm going to adjust the material that I'm using. So I'm going to change this blue material. So if I select this, I'm going to change this blue material. So what I need to do is, if I go to my materials tab, so if I want to make this surface look a little bit more shiny, what I need to do is come over to my material, and I need to bring down the roughness. So right now it's set to 5%. I'm going to bring that down just a little bit to make it a little less rough. I'm going to bring up the specular a little bit, and I'm actually going to make it slightly metallic. Now if I change my camera position, so I'm going to hit the N key to bring up my menu, and I'm once again going to lock camera to view, hit the N key again, rotate my position a little bit on here, move it into place. So that gives us kind of a cool looking effect. It's a little bit more shiny. You can see that the white from the background is reflecting off of it a little bit. It's reflecting off of each other. So that's pretty cool. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is actually render this out to see what it looks like. Turn this off. So I'm going to right click on this line here, and I'm going to join the areas. So now you can see a larger image of what it's going to look like. Let's go back. I'm going to go into my render, and I'm going to change the render quality. I'm going to make this 200. Okay. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is render this out. So if I go up to the render menu and I say click on render image. This may take a minute. Alright, so once your scene is completely rendered out, it looks like this. What you need to do now is actually export this image, because just by rendering it does not mean it's being saved. So in order to save it, you go up to the image menu and you go to save as, and then you select a place. I'm just going to put this on my desktop. Okay, save image. There we go. So now I can close this render window, go back to our main interface. If I was to go to my desktop now, you'd see now here is the image I just rendered out. And there it is. So this is a way you guys can easily create your own 3D rendered images from 2D images. I hope this tutorial was helpful, and I'll see you next time on Tech Necessity.